The first time I realized my mother-in-law had been inside my house while I wasn't home, it wasn't because of a missing item. It was because of the soup. A pot of chicken soup was sitting on my stove when I got back from work, still warm, with chopped parsley floating on top, and my kitchen wiped down so thoroughly it didn't even look like my own house. I stood there in my heels and work blazer, staring at that pot like it might explain itself. Because I had not made soup. My husband, Ryan, didn't cook unless it involved a grill and 3 pounds of red meat. And my 9-year-old daughter, Sophie, had spent the afternoon at her after-school art program. No one should have been in my kitchen. No one. I remember walking to the sink and touching the side of the pot just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Warm. Recently made. Whoever had cooked it had been in my home less than an hour earlier, and somehow, before I even checked the locks or called my husband, I already knew exactly who it was. My mother-in-law, Denise, had a habit of helping that always felt more like trespassing with good manners. She called it caring. She called it family. She called it doing what needed to be done. What she meant was this. If she wanted access to your life, she took it. And if you objected, she acted like you were the unstable one. By then, I was 37 years old, living in a suburb outside Indianapolis with my husband Ryan and our daughter Sophie. From the outside, our life looked polished and boring in the best possible way. Ryan sold medical equipment. I managed operations for a private orthodontics group. We had a 2-story brick house with a white porch swing, a labradoodle named Pepper who shed like it was a personal mission, and a daughter who left glitter in every room she entered. We weren't flashy. We weren't dramatic. We were the kind of family people assume is fine because the lawn gets mowed, the bills get paid, and the Christmas cards go out on time. What nobody saw was how much of my marriage had quietly started orbiting around Ryan's mother. Denise had been a widow for 6 years and had turned her grief into a kind of authority no one in that family knew how to challenge. She didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She didn't do any of the obvious, easy-to-identify behaviors people imagine when they hear the word toxic. Denise was smarter than that. She inserted herself. She rearranged. She advised. She stopped by. She had opinions about Sophie's school, opinions about my pantry, opinions about which pediatrician we should use, opinions about whether I was working too much, whether Ryan was working too much, whether our guest room curtains were too dark, whether I folded towels incorrectly, whether Sophie needed bangs, and because she always delivered those opinions with a soft smile and a casserole dish, Ryan had spent most of our marriage treating them like harmless quirks. Mom just likes to feel useful, he'd say, or, she means well, Paige. Paige. That's me, Paige Holloway. And for 11 years of marriage, I had been swallowing my discomfort because I loved my husband, and because Denise had mastered the art of making every boundary sound like cruelty. The first time she used her own key without asking, Ryan and I had only been married 6 months. I came home from a Saturday shift at the clinic and found her in my bedroom helping by reorganizing my closet. She had separated my dresses by color and boxed up 3 pairs of shoes she said I never seemed to wear. I was so stunned I just stood there holding my purse while she smiled and said, "You're welcome, sweetheart. Your mornings will be so much easier now." When I told Ryan that night I didn't want anyone going through my closet without permission, he agreed in theory and then ruined it in practice. He called her and said, laughing, "Mom, you can't keep scaring Paige like that." Scaring me. As if I were a nervous cat who'd overreacted to a vacuum cleaner, not a grown woman whose privacy had been bulldozed. Denise cried, naturally. Not to me, to Ryan. She said she was just trying to help, that she had forgotten how sensitive young wives can be. And by the end of the week, I was the one reassuring my husband that no, I didn't hate his mother. No, I didn't want family drama. No, it wasn't worth making a huge issue out of. That was how it always went. A small violation, my objection, her tears, Ryan's discomfort, my silence. 3 years later, when Sophie was born, it got worse. Denise started keeping a full nursery setup at her house without asking us first. Not a pack and play and a few toys, a full setup. Crib, diaper station, bottles, a rocking chair, pink blackout curtains. It looked less like a grandmother preparing for visits and more like someone staging a second home for my child. When I told Ryan it made me uncomfortable, he rubbed his forehead and said, "Mom's just excited. Can we not make this weird? Can we not make this weird?" That sentence lived in my marriage like mold behind wallpaper, because somehow the person crossing the line was never the one making things weird. It was always the person naming it. By the time Sophie turned 9, Denise had upgraded from intrusive to strategic. She no longer pushed every boundary openly. She tested them quietly. She'd text Sophie directly before asking us if she could take her for ice cream, making it harder for us to say no without disappointing a child. She'd drop off groceries I hadn't asked for, then mention to Ryan that my fridge seemed empty when she came by. She'd offer to pick Sophie up from school if my workday ran long, then casually keep her an extra 2 hours without updating me because they'd just popped by Denise's friend's house or gone to Target for a fun little treat. Every single incident by itself looked small. That was the trick. Nothing looked explosive in isolation, but when you stacked them together, year after year, they formed something ugly, a quiet message. Your home is not fully yours. Your child is not fully yours. Your schedule, your routines, your decisions. None of them are fully yours if I feel like stepping in. And Ryan, God help me, kept standing in the middle trying to keep everyone comfortable, especially his mother. The soup was the first time I stopped pretending I could live with it. I pulled out my phone and called Ryan before I even took off my shoes. He answered on the second ring. Hey babe, did your mother come into our house today? Silence, not confusion, not, what are you talking about? Silence, the kind that tells you the truth before the words do. When Ryan finally spoke, his voice had that careful tone people use when they know they're already losing. She just dropped something off. I stared at the soup. Drop something off? She made Sophie soup because she said Sophie sounded sniffly this morning. I actually laughed. A short, sharp laugh. Because my daughter did not have a cold. She had sneezed once because Pepper's fur had gotten in her face at breakfast. That doesn't answer my question. I said, did your mother let herself into my house while no one was home? Another pause. Then quietly, yes. I closed my eyes. Why does she have a key, Ryan? She's always had a key. No, I said. She had a spare key for emergencies, a burst pipe, a lockout, a fire, not for casual weekday soup delivery. He exhaled into the phone like I was exhausting him. Paige, she was trying to do something nice. That sentence lit something in me on fire, because women like Denise survive on that sentence. Trying to do something nice. As if intent erases trespassing, as if control becomes kindness if you garnish it with parsley. I put my bag down on the counter very carefully. Did Sophie know your mother was coming over? No. Did I know? No. Then explain to me why your mother was in my kitchen while my child was somewhere else and I was still at work. Ryan didn't answer. And in that silence, standing in my too-clean kitchen with a stranger's soup cooling on my stove, I understood something I should have understood years earlier. This wasn't about Denise being overbearing. It was about Ryan letting her be. It was about a husband who kept calling his mother's invasions help, because admitting they were invasions would require him to do something about them. I hung up without another word, then I did something I had never done before. I walked straight to the hall closet, pulled down the small indoor security camera box Ryan had bought after a package theft scare the previous winter, and started charging it at the kitchen counter. Because if Denise wanted to keep helping when I wasn't home, I was done hearing about it secondhand. I wanted to see exactly what she thought she had the right to do in my house. And 3 days later, that camera would show me something so brazen, so deliberate, that by the time Ryan came home from work that Friday, his mother's soup would be the least of our problems. The camera arrived on a Wednesday. By Friday, I wished I had never looked at the footage. I picked Sophie up from school that afternoon, drove her to a friend's birthday party at a trampoline park, and then told Ryan I had to stay late at the office to finish payroll corrections. That part was a lie. The office had closed at 5. By 5:30, I was parked in the lot of a coffee shop 2 miles from our house with my laptop open, my stomach in knots, and the live camera feed from my own kitchen glowing on the screen. I felt ridiculous at first, paranoid, petty, like maybe I had finally become the unreasonable woman Denise had spent years quietly painting me as. For 40 minutes, nothing happened. The kitchen sat empty and still. The dog wandered through once, sniffed the baseboards, and left. A rectangle of evening sunlight moved across the floorboards near the back door. At 6:14 p.m., my front door opened. Denise walked in carrying 2 reusable grocery bags and wearing the expression of someone entering a place she considered partly hers. Not cautious, not hurried, comfortable. She set the bags on my counter, took off her cardigan, folded it over a stool, and went straight to the refrigerator like she lived there. I stared at the screen. My hands actually went cold. Because there's a huge difference between suspecting someone crosses boundaries and watching them do it with complete confidence. She started unloading groceries. Soup containers, a carton of strawberries, yogurt tubes Sophie liked, ground turkey, a box of crackers. On paper, it looked generous, helpful, exactly the kind of thing Ryan would defend. Then Denise took a small notepad out of her purse and set it beside the fruit bowl. A list. My list. The grocery list I kept clipped to the side of the fridge for things we were running low on. I leaned closer to the screen. She wasn't just dropping off food, she had been reading my shopping list, using it to decide what to buy, which meant she hadn't just entered my house once for soup. She had been in my kitchen long enough, and often enough, to know where I kept the notepad and feel entitled to use it. Then she did something that made the back of my neck prickle. She opened my freezer, took out the batch of enchiladas I had made the weekend before, frowned at the label I'd written on the foil lid, and then put them in a lower drawer beneath frozen vegetables. Not a big thing. Unless you understand Denise. Denise never left things where I put them if she thought she had a better system. She moved, adjusted, corrected. Every tiny act said the same thing. I know this house better than you do. I kept watching. At 6:27, she walked down the hallway toward the bedrooms. The camera didn't cover the rest of the house. For the next 11 minutes, I sat in that coffee shop staring at an empty kitchen while my mother-in-law moved around in rooms I couldn't see. My bedroom, Sophie's room, my bathroom, the home office. I had no idea, and that uncertainty was somehow worse than if I'd seen something specific. At 6:38, she came back into frame carrying a small armful of clothes. Sophie's clothes, a pair of leggings, 2 t-shirts, and a denim jacket from the mudroom bench. Denise set them on the island, smoothed them with both hands, then pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. One photo, then another. She turned the jacket around and photographed the size tag. Then she texted someone. My breath caught. I couldn't hear anything, but I could see her typing with the speed of someone continuing a conversation that had already been happening. A minute later, her phone rang. She answered immediately and propped it between her shoulder and ear while refolding Sophie's clothes. I couldn't hear the voice on the other end, but I knew exactly when Denise said the words because I watched her lips move. She's outgrown almost everything. I went completely still. She held up the denim jacket to the phone camera, nodding like she was receiving instructions. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. And said, "No, don't ask Paige. She'll make a whole thing out of it." I felt my face go hot, not with embarrassment, with rage, because suddenly it all snapped into place. The random shopping bags, the comments about Sophie needing new school clothes, the way Denise had started showing up with shoes, jackets, sweaters, always in the wrong size and always with the tags already removed so I couldn't return them. She wasn't just helping. She'd been going through my daughter's things, taking inventory, and discussing them with someone else like I was a difficult assistant instead of Sophie's mother. At 6:44, Denise walked over to the drawer beside the fridge, the one where I kept school forms, medical cards, and spare house keys. She opened it without hesitation. Then she took out Sophie's school pickup card, the bright yellow laminated card with our emergency contact list on the back. She looked at it for a few seconds, took a picture, and put it back. I stopped breathing. My whole body locked up around one thought. Why would she need that? Why would my mother-in-law be photographing my daughter's school pickup card? I grabbed my phone and called Ryan immediately. He answered, sounding distracted. "Hey, I'm just leaving the office." "Where's your mother right now?" Silence. Then, "What? Do not play dumb with me. Where is your mother?" "Paige, I have no idea why." I shut my eyes and pressed my fingers to my forehead because if I didn't keep my voice level, I was going to start screaming in a coffee shop full of strangers. "I'm watching your mother on our kitchen camera right now," I said. "She is in our house. She has been in our bedrooms. She has taken photos of Sophie's clothes, and she just took a picture of Sophie's school pickup card. That got him." I heard the car door slam in the background. "What do you mean she took a picture of the pickup card?" Exactly what I said. Maybe she just wanted the school number or something. I actually laughed. "Ryan, if you say maybe one more time, I am going to lose what little patience I have left." He went quiet. Then more carefully, "I'll call her." "No," I said instantly. "Do not warn her. Paige, No, I want to know what she thinks she's doing when she believes no one is watching. Ryan exhaled hard. Okay, fine. I'll come home. I ended the call and looked back at the screen. Denise was still in the kitchen, now wiping down my counters with one of my dish towels as if she were tidying up after a perfectly normal visit. Then her phone buzzed. She checked it, smiled, and typed back quickly. A few seconds later, she picked up the grocery bags, slipped her cardigan back on, and headed for the front door. Before leaving, she paused in the hallway mirror. She adjusted her lipstick, smoothed her hair, and smiled at herself. Not a happy smile, a satisfied one, like a woman whose errand had gone exactly according to plan. By the time I got home, Ryan's car was already in the driveway. Denise's wasn't. Of course not. She'd gotten what she came for. I walked into the kitchen still carrying my laptop bag and found Ryan standing by the island with both hands braced against the counter. He looked pale. He'd already watched the footage. Good. I set my purse down and asked the only question that mattered. What the hell is she doing with our daughter's school pickup card? Ryan didn't answer right away. That was the moment I knew. Not guessed. Knew. Because if he didn't have a good explanation ready, it meant there wasn't one. Finally, he rubbed his face and said quietly, Mom mentioned a few weeks ago that she thought it would make things easier if she picked Sophie up from school sometimes. I stared at him. What? She said, with your schedule and my travel days. Ryan. My voice cut through the room so sharply he stopped talking. She does not pick up our daughter from school, ever, and if this conversation started a few weeks ago, why am I hearing about it now? He looked miserable, cornered, but not surprised. That part mattered, because miserable men can still be honest. Cornered men usually are. Because I told her no, he said. I folded my arms and waited. He swallowed. And she said she'd drop it. I laughed once, disbelieving. You told Denise no, she said okay, and now she's secretly photographing Sophie's pickup card in my kitchen. Does that sound drop to you? Ryan didn't answer. He didn't need to. I took my laptop back out, reopened the footage, and scrolled through it again from the beginning. This time I watched every second slower. The groceries, the list, the hallway, the clothes, the school card. Then, at 6:41, I saw something I had missed the first time. Denise wasn't texting one person, she was texting in a group chat. I could only see it for a second when she tilted the phone toward the overhead light, but it was enough. 3 names. Denise, Ryan, and someone listed only as Mrs. B. I froze the frame and zoomed in until the image blurred. Mrs. B. There was only one Mrs. B in Sophie's daily life that Denise would have any reason to text. Mrs. Beecham, Sophie's first-grade teacher. I felt something inside me go cold. Not hot, not angry. Cold. The kind of cold that comes right before you understand the shape of a betrayal. I looked up at Ryan. He saw it on my face immediately. What? I turned the laptop around so he could see the blurry screenshot. Why? I asked very quietly. Is your mother in a group chat with you and my daughter's teacher? And the look on Ryan's face told me he had just realized he wasn't going to be able to talk his way out of this one. Ryan looked at the screenshot for all of 2 seconds before sitting down hard at the kitchen table, like his legs had stopped working. That was all the answer I needed. Because innocent people don't collapse when you ask a simple question, they answer it. I didn't sit. I stood there in my own kitchen with my laptop open between us, staring at my husband while the room went so quiet I could hear the dishwasher humming. Ryan, I said, and my voice was calmer than I felt. Start talking. He rubbed both hands over his face. Paige, it's not what it looks like. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because people only say that when it looks exactly like what it is. Then tell me what it is. He swallowed hard and looked at the floor. A few months ago, Sophie forgot her lunchbox and Denise offered to take it to school. She ended up meeting Mrs. Beecham in the office. After that, she asked if it would be easier if she helped with pickups once in a while. And you said no. Yes. But somehow she still ended up in a group chat with Sophie's teacher. Ryan's shoulders dropped. Mom said it was only in case of emergencies. I stared at him. Did I approve that? No. Did Sophie's school have my permission to add your mother as a pickup contact? He didn't answer. I took one step closer to the table. Ryan. His eyes shut. Mom filled out one of the emergency contact forms when she took Sophie to school that day. For a second, I genuinely couldn't process the sentence. It hit me in pieces. Denise had gone to the school. Denise had filled out paperwork. Denise had inserted herself into my daughter's records, and my husband had known. The kitchen blurred around the edges. When were you planning to tell me that your mother put herself on my child's school file? Ryan stood up too fast. Paige, listen to me. No. I held up my hand. You listen to me. Your mother entered my house without permission, photographed my daughter's pickup card, and you are now telling me she put herself on school paperwork behind my back. Do you understand how insane that sounds? She never meant any harm. There it was. The sentence. The same old sentence dressed up in different words. I felt something in me snap clean in half. This is the problem, I said quietly. You keep acting like intent matters more than behavior. I don't care what she meant. I care what she did. Ryan opened his mouth, then shut it again. And for the first time in our entire marriage, I saw it clearly. He wasn't in the middle trying to keep the peace. He was standing beside the problem, hoping I'd adjust to it. I grabbed my keys. Where are you going? He asked. To Sophie's school. It's after hours. Good. Then I won't have to smile while I do this. I drove there with my heart pounding so hard my hands shook on the steering wheel. The school office was closed, but the district administration number was posted on the side door. I sat in my car, called the emergency after hours line, and told the woman who answered exactly what had happened. I kept my voice steady. My mother-in-law had accessed my child's school information without my consent. She had been communicating with the teacher without my knowledge. She had photographed school pickup documents inside my home. I wanted every non-parent contact removed immediately, and I wanted a record of the complaint entered before the next school day. The woman on the phone sounded alarmed enough that I knew I wasn't overreacting. By 8:15 that night, I had an email confirmation from the district. Denise Holloway was removed from every contact list. Her access was revoked, and a note had been placed on Sophie's file that she was not to be released to anyone except me or Ryan without direct verbal confirmation from me. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. Because I still didn't know how far Denise had already gotten. When I got home, Ryan was sitting in the dark living room with the television off. He stood up when I walked in. Paige, can we please just talk? I set my bag down by the stairs. No, we're past talking. His face tightened. What does that mean? It means tomorrow morning I'm changing the locks. He blinked. What? You heard me. Paige, come on. No. I stepped closer. Your mother has been in my house, in my child's records, and in direct contact with her teacher behind my back. You don't get to say, come on, like I'm upset over a missing casserole dish. Ryan dragged a hand through his hair. She's still my mother. And Sophie is my daughter. That shut him up. For one long second we just stared at each other, then he said the one thing that made everything worse. She thought she was helping because she doesn't trust your schedule. I went still. What? Ryan looked like he regretted it the second it left his mouth, but it was too late. She said Sophie's always the last kid in aftercare on your late days, he said carefully. And she worried that if something happened, you'd be stuck at work and nobody would get there fast enough. I stared at him like he'd started speaking another language. She doesn't trust my schedule? She thinks Sophie needs more consistency. I laughed then, a sharp, disbelieving sound that didn't even sound like me. Consistency, I said. I am the one who packs Sophie's lunches, signs her field trip forms, schedules her dentist appointments, knows her reading level, buys her winter boots, remembers Spirit Week, and sits up with her when she has a fever. Your mother shows up with soup and a shopping bag and suddenly she's the authority on consistency. Ryan looked away, and that was when the final piece slid into place. This had never just been Denise meddling. This was Denise building a case. A quiet little story she'd been telling herself, and apparently Ryan too, that I was too busy, too rigid, too controlling, too unavailable to manage my own child without her stepping in. The groceries, the clothes, the school, the help. It wasn't random. It was a campaign, a soft, smiling takeover. And the most humiliating part was that she had been doing it with my husband's cooperation, whether he admitted that to himself or not. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at him and said, very clearly, I want you out of this house tonight. Ryan's face went white. Paige, no, I'm done protecting your feelings while you protect your mother's access to my life. You're seriously kicking me out over this? I took a step toward him. Your mother put herself into my daughter's school records. She entered my home without permission. She documented my child's belongings. And you knew enough to hide it from me. So yes, Ryan, I am absolutely serious. He stood there for a long moment, stunned. Then he tried one last move. Think about Sophie. I nodded. I am. That was the end of it. Ryan packed a bag and left for his brother's place just after 10. I changed the garage code before midnight. At 7 the next morning, a locksmith replaced every exterior lock in the house. At 8:15, I sat across from Sophie's principal and Mrs. Beecham with printed screenshots from the kitchen camera spread across the conference table. Mrs. Beecham looked mortified. The principal looked furious. By the end of that meeting, I learned 3 things. First, Denise had not merely been texting about emergencies, she had been messaging Mrs. Beecham for over a month, asking about Sophie's adjustment, her homework habits, who usually picked her up, whether she seemed tired after school, and whether she had mentioned being home alone in the afternoons. Second, Mrs. Beecham, God help her, had answered some of those questions because Denise had presented herself as very involved and copied Ryan in the group chat. Third, and most importantly, Denise had tried to pick Sophie up from school the previous Tuesday, not successfully, but she had shown up. According to the front office, Denise had smiled, said there must have been some confusion, and left before they could call me because Sophie was still at art club and not ready for pickup yet. I sat there in that school office feeling like all the air had been sucked out of the room. Previous Tuesday. That was the same day Denise had made the soup. The same day she had gone through my house. The same day she had photographed Sophie's pickup card. She hadn't been casually overstepping. She had been preparing. She wanted access to my daughter without me. And when the school didn't hand Sophie over, she came back to my house to gather more information. By the time I walked out of that building, my hands were ice cold. I drove straight to an attorney's office downtown. Not a divorce attorney, not yet. A family law attorney who handled custodial interference, emergency protective orders, and third-party access disputes. I told her everything. The key, the footage, the school contact, the attempted pickup, Ryan's silence, Denise's pattern of intrusion. She listened without interrupting, took notes, and then looked me in the eye and said the sentence that finally made me stop second-guessing myself. "You're not dealing with an overbearing grandmother," she said. "You are dealing with someone who is methodically trying to establish parental access and normalize it before you can object." I felt sick. Not because it was new information, because hearing it out loud made it real. That afternoon we filed for a temporary no-contact order preventing Denise from picking up, contacting, or attempting to access Sophie through school, extracurriculars, or our home until a hearing could be held. I also filed for a temporary separation agreement requiring that Ryan have no unsupervised authority to add third-party contacts for Sophie without my written consent. When Ryan got served 2 days later, he called me 13 times. I didn't answer once. Denise left me a voicemail full of tears, outrage, and wounded innocence. She said I was humiliating her. She said I was tearing a family apart over misunderstandings. She said Sophie loved her and would be devastated. She never once apologized. At the hearing 10 days later, the judge watched the kitchen footage in silence. Then she read the school messages. Then she looked at Denise, perfect hair, pearl earrings, folded tissues in her lap, and asked one simple question. "Why were you attempting to arrange access to this child without the mother's knowledge or consent?" Denise cried. Of course she cried. She talked about concern, about routine, about helping a busy household, about how she had only ever loved Sophie. The judge let her finish. Then she granted the order. No school contact, no pickup access, no unsupervised visits, no use of any prior house key or garage code, and because the footage showed unauthorized entry after explicit objections, Denise was ordered to surrender every key, code, and copied document connected to my home or daughter. Ryan moved back in 3 weeks later only after agreeing, in writing, to marriage counseling, separate boundaries with his mother, and a permanent rule that no one, including family, would ever again be added to Sophie's records without both parents' written approval. Denise still sends the occasional dramatic birthday card addressed only to Sophie. They go straight into a box in the hall closet, unopened. Sophie is 10 now. She still loves art club, still leaves glitter in impossible places, and still asks for soup when she has a cold. I make it myself, and every time I lock my own front door at night, I remember the woman I used to be. The one who kept calling trespassing help because that was easier than calling it what it was. I'm not her anymore. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting your child, I hope you chose protection. Take care of yourself, hold your family close, and if you want more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.